brand, and I want to thank you so much for purchasing this course. Over the last 3 years, I have become a guinea pig and tried many different things and just dove in headfirst so that I could learn about investing. And I've learned quite a few things. One of the most important being is if you want to take the careful long-term approach, but just be consistent, it's actually a lot easier than people are made to believe. And that's what I want to highlight this entire strategy with a bit of financial education in here. So before I get too into it, I'm going to show you my story and my 3-year learning curve so that you have a little bit more of a reason to listen to what I have to say, okay? So a few important factors to begin with. Thankfully, my parents taught me the skill of saving. So when I moved to South Korea in 2014 and 2016, I decided to save half of my paycheck, mainly because I had a goal that I wanted to travel for a year, and I needed money to do that. So that was the starting point for me to start saving money. By March 2016, I had saved $30,000, and I'd visited home for a month before backpacking for a year, and had decided to invest $10,000 of that to be responsible and start growing my money. Now, it wasn't until May 2017 when I returned to Canada to trade my time for money, I got some bad news about my investments. So an important strategy for anybody if they want to build wealth over time is to pay yourself first every month. Now, you don't have to go as extreme as I did. A minimum you should think of is at least 10%. But for example, I knew that I was getting paid once a month, but my school in Korea was covering my rent. So every time I got paid, I would send $1,200 home and live off the remaining $1,000 for 30 days. I thought that would be pretty viable. After 2 years, and a bit of a raise, I ended up with $30,000. And as I mentioned, $20,000 of it would go to travel, $10,000 of it went to investing. So in March 2016, after my contract, I visited home and decided to pay myself first again. The thing was, I knew nothing. I did no research, and I did what I assume most people in Canada and most people around the world probably did. They go to a bank and they say, hey, how do I grow my money? Of course, the bank is happy to take your business. So they say, hey, why don't you sit down with our sales representative, that they title a financial advisor. And I opened a tax-free savings account. And within that account, I invested my $10,000 in mutual funds. And I felt great. I thought I was going to be rich. And I was like, awesome, I'm going to go travel. It wasn't until 15 months later, in May of 2017, I returned home. And only in August of 2017, when I was on the phone with Canada Revenue Agency, did I find out that I owed $1,400 in tax because I invested when I was what's considered a non-resident. Meaning, I visited, the financial advisor did an assessment, asked what my employer was, didn't have one, asked where I was living. I wouldn't be living here, I'm just visiting. But he opened a TFSA anyways. Now, unfortunately, if you're not living in Canada, you're not allowed to invest in a TFSA without tax penalties. So it turns out the financial advisor didn't know the rules of the account he was opening for me. And I, naive at the time, I realized that this so-called professional was just a guy that can make mistakes. And that was enough for me to think, I'm going to learn how to manage my own money. And I was off on my journey. So this mistake was a great teacher. And a few factors that I learned are very important and that everyone should consider is that financial advisors at commercial banks or financial services companies are really just salespeople. They are trained in sales, not finance. And they work in the institution's best interest, not yours. Now, the second thing I learned about Canada, at least, was the tax-free savings account. This mistake helped me learn the pros and cons of the best-kept secret in Canada, the TFSA. Now, of course, I do highlight this for Canadians, but in the US, a similar tax-free investing account you have access to is called a Roth IRA. And unfortunately, in other countries, I'm not exactly sure about the account that you could use that would have tax benefits, but I do encourage you, whichever country you're from, to do some research and Google what type of tax benefit investing accounts there might be for your country. And I guarantee you can find a little bit more information. And if you spend 10 minutes each day digging a bit deeper, you will be able to start with this strategy that I'm going to show you as well in whichever country that you're in. Lastly, I found out that mutual funds are expensive and ultimately the worst type of investment that you can put your money into. And I began to learn more about different investment products outside of them. But the main reason that mutual funds are so bad is because, and again, mutual funds are bad compared to other options, mainly because they are active, which makes the fee extremely high. And later on in this presentation, I will get to that and show you how the fee actually affects your investment over time and why it's probably best to consider more cost-effective options, especially in 2020 now that we have them, outside of mutual funds. So the fall of 2017, I opened my first self-directed tax-free savings account, and this is when my learning journey started. I began reading investment books, the great books about Warren Buffett, Peter Lynch. I started learning about index funds, Tony Robbins, Unshakable was a notable one, what a fiduciary is, high fees, and this just started my passion, and it snowballed from there. Now, a few things fell into place for me as well, or at least it felt like it did. I started a new job at a marketing company, and at that time, I just moved in with some of my good friends after returning back to Canada, and I started a new job a month later, and one of my best friends and new coworkers happened to start self-direct investing, meaning they opened a tax-free investing account themselves and were in control. And that idea, to me, was a light bulb, thinking, okay, I need to get in on this, and I've got trusted friends and new coworkers that I can ask questions and help me get started. So I did that, and it wasn't until June 2018, though, that I opened a second self-directed tax-free savings account. So by that time, I had 2 tax-free savings accounts, one for index funds and one for stocks. Now, the main reason I want to bring this up is that it took time. This isn't something that happened overnight, and it took me setting aside time to actively learn all of this. And of course, it's also the reason I got this far is because I didn't stop. So I just encourage you to realize that this isn't going to happen overnight, and it's not a get-rich-quick scheme. Now, of course, you don't have to go through 3 years of trial and error like I did. I'm trying to put all this information into the one course for you so that you can benefit. But for me, it was something that I was committed to learn. Now, in November 2017, in 2 weeks, I made my first 100% gain on an investment. And after that, it was followed up by multiple failures. So, what that taught me was I began to see opportunity instead of risk. That was my eureka aha moment. Like, yo, there's opportunity here. I just really need to learn how to play the game well. And it wasn't until October of 2018 in Canada, when cannabis was legalized, that I took the time from November 2017 to study a few companies. And in June 2018, I invested a large chunk of money in one and a smaller chunk of money in another. And I sold those shares on October 17th for a 100% return on investment in one and 80% on the other. And I was like, wow, again, I'm not rich, but I realized that if you learn to play the game well, you can make money on the side. And it was from 2018, especially into 2019, that I shifted my focus from stocks to low-cost funds. Stocks are certainly more risky, and I don't advise any beginner investor to just dive in, especially with more money than you can afford to lose. So stocks certainly take more attention. However, there exists an investment vehicle known as low-cost, well, I should just call them index funds or exchange-traded funds, which are diversified, low-cost funds that everyone should take advantage of. And that's what I'm going to introduce you to today. So, I read more books, but ultimately, November 2017 to now has just been a constant gradual learning curve, and I'm super excited to share what I've learned with all of you. So, 2019 was my year of creating assets. I was like, you know what? I need to start taking action. So, from January to April 2019, I wrote an ebook called Grown Money, A Practical Guide to Personal Finance and Self-Direct Investing. And I've recorded the audiobook, so if you go to Instagram, you can find that in the link in the bio, or you can purchase it on Amazon.ca. But it was the summer of 2019 where I developed my classroom content to teach this strategy to students in high school and just introduce them to investing knowledge that they otherwise would never be introduced to. And with this came the low-cost fund strategy with index funds and ETFs, and that's what I'm going to show you today. So 2 years of trial and error led me to finally put the plan together in my head and start my retirement fund for 2060, and that's what I'm here to show you. So in doing all of this, I learned about really 5 basic investment vehicles: stocks, bonds, index funds, exchange-traded funds, and mutual funds. And then outside of these investment vehicles, which I'll cover a little bit, there are 3 main methods or options for investing that you have if you're not rich. And that's a financial advisor, a robo-advisor, or self-direct investing yourself. Now, one thing I want to highlight before we start is the 3 principal investing objectives. The idea of every investor is firstly to keep your money, right? So this is called the safety of principal. When you invest your money, you want to make sure that that amount doesn't lose anything. You want to keep that base that you've invested, known as your principal investment. So that's the safety of principal. The second main objective is the growth of capital. So you want that money that's invested to grow over time, and this is known as capital gains. And lastly, passive income from dividends. This is when you've invested in a fund or a vehicle that pays out dividend income. So whether it's monthly, quarterly, or annually, because you own shares, you get paid dividends, a percentage of the profits. And these are another incentive why people invest. And so this strategy is going to introduce you to index funds and exchange-traded funds, which cover all three of these, plus two more, which I'll show you later in the video. Now, so where I sit to begin 2020, I use two tax-free savings accounts, like I mentioned. I have one self-direct with my bank for stocks, where it's simply just $9.99 per buy or sell. And now I want to make this clear. I'm not an advocate for day trading or trying to buy one day and sell the other. I am an advocate for buying and holding for the long term, otherwise known as a value investor or a long-term investor. So I just can't stress that enough. And the strategy is not going to teach you to day trade. It's teaching you how to build wealth over time. But the second TFSA I have, which is what I'm going to introduce you to, is a self-direct one with Questrade. For ETFs and index funds, why do I use Questrade and why do I at least recommend this for Canadians is because it is free to buy ETF or index fund shares. And I'll get to that later and show you why that's important. But based on where I'm at right now, I have about $8,000 in cash in my bank account, and I like to hold, or my checking account, sorry, and I like to hold cash so that I have options in case the market takes a big dive or I see an opportunity. I have $25,000 of market value in my tax-free savings account, one with my stocks, and I have a few high-risk plays in there for 2020 that I think myself will pay off. But again, I've been a guinea pig, so we'll see what happens. Only time will tell. And then what I've started is this $9,000 of market value in my TFSA number 2, and this is my long-term retirement fund. So every month, I send $500 into my Questrade TFSA, and I buy more shares of either index fund that I own. I will continue to do this for the next 40 years. I will reinvest dividends every single time I get paid them and directly reinvest them with a drip, which I'll cover later. And it will be one source of passive income in my future, along with many other sources as I continue to put my money in different places. So what this course will teach you ultimately, I'm actually only going to cover the first 5 objectives in this one because I'm offering this course for a lower price through Udemy, but it's going to give you main perspective and investing knowledge that just is not taught in school that we all should learn. And this covers investment vehicles, brokers to invest with, the tax-free savings account in Canada. And again, I just encourage you, if you're not in Canada, to look up what tax benefit accounts you might, or tax efficient accounts might be existent in your country. But if you're in the US, the Roth IRA is the closest comparison to the TFSA. And after that, we've got the investment options in Canada and any country worldwide, really, and how the fees affect your returns. And yeah, sorry, I do apologize. I'm actually going to be teaching you the step-by-step strategy as well. The one thing I'm not going to be covering in this one is the big picture. That one is available in the other course, but so the easiest and most effective way to build wealth over your lifetime is the step-by-step strategy that can save you hundreds of thousands of dollars in fees over your lifetime. The course that I've made that actually features how to think big picture and what to do when the markets fall, you know what? I'm just going to include that in this as well. So why not? Anyways, this has been the first video. This is my story and why you should consider taking what I have to say seriously, because I don't see anyone else out there doing it. And I don't see them doing it for such a low cost or for free. This is a passion of mine, so I hope you can watch the rest of the series, take this into consideration, compare it to what you've experienced in your lifetime and see that this might actually be a solid plan for you, and you can take what you learn and put it into action whenever you feel ready. So thank you so much. That's been the first lesson. We're going to jump into lesson 2 now.